America, America, make God thy gold refined, till all success be nobleness, and ever again divine. And you know, when I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies.
Hello, and welcome back to Wayland Weekly Buzz. I'm your host, Susan Wagner. Our spotlight this week is on changes to Wayland's town government structure and its budget process. Last week, we heard the Selectmen's perspective. Today, we look at these changes through the eyes of the Finance Committee. Joining us once again is Carol Martin, Chair of the Finance Committee, and FinCom Vice Chair Steve Correa. We'll get to that discussion right after these town government committee reports and other news items. The Selectmen's first order of business this past Monday involved the asbestos contamination at River's Edge. According to town engineer Paul Brinkman, the asbestos has to be removed before negotiations with the developer Wood Partners can be moved along. The sale and transfer of the property to Wood Partners has already been delayed and created the need for several extensions of the land development agreement, the most recent until the end of next February. The developer has expressed some concern about this, Brinkman said, adding that the work needs to be performed in a timely manner in order to avoid the risk of withdrawal by the developer. Secondly, the Selectmen have released the town's 2018 annual report. You can find a copy at our website, wacamtv.tv/buzz. The Finance Committee also met this past Monday and discussed the conservation and customer service advantages of the advanced water meter reading article to be presented to special town meeting by the Board of Public Works. Brinkman told the committee that the installed cost of a meter would be $260 and the expected life of the unit would be 20 years. The Buzz plans a full show devoted to this warrant article, scheduled for the second week of November, just before special town meeting. Stay tuned. At the school committee's September 24th meeting, Cliff Lewis of the Board of Public Works spoke about the high school wastewater plant, which is not currently operational. The schools plan to fix the facility and to pay half the cost for a new employee to run it. Meantime, the Board of Public Works has been taking a comprehensive look at what to do with wastewater facilities across the town. In addition, they're exploring efficiencies that will provide both better operations and lower costs. The committee also reviewed how costs are allocated for special revenue funds focusing on full-day kindergarten. The committee agreed to review the allocation formula to ensure that it's fairly distributing costs, noting that the current formula may attribute fees to some costs that would be incurred anyway, even if full-day kindergarten were not offered. The change in school start times is moving closer to reality. The school committee has posted 3 community information dates to talk about the new proposal for the fall of 2019. Those dates are Wednesday, October 10th at 10 a.m. and Wednesday, October 17 at 7 p.m., both at the high school lecture hall, and Monday, November 5th at 7 p.m. at the Boston Police Headquarters, 1 Schroeder Plaza, Boston. The school committee will vote in late November. An outline of the proposed start times along with the information dates is posted on our website, wacam.tv/buzz. Construction documents for the high school master athletic plan have gone out to bid, and comments on its warrant article have gone through their first round of edits with the Finance Committee. The Conservation Commission is continuing to review the project to ensure that water quality will not be affected, and is working to complete that project as quickly as possible. The school committee will be hosting a meeting on October 22nd, geared towards neighbors, but open to the general public to review the project with residents. Our next program will be devoted to the athletic plan warrant article issue. The Surface Water Quality Committee, which met on Thursday the 27th, reports that they discussed two significant items. First was the late season growth of Eurasian milfoil and tape grass and actions planned to cope. These include mechanical harvesting of tape grass and diver-assisted suction harvesting for milfoil. The second item was the committee's role in helping the town meet the new stormwater management regulations mandated by the Environmental Protection Agency. In other news, Wayland firefighter Todd Winner is the recipient of the 2018 Fire and Life Safety Award of the Year, sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Fire Services. The award was presented by the state fire marshal. Over his 16-year career with the Wayland Fire Department, Winner has focused on community risk reduction. You can read about Todd's remarkable achievements on our website, waycam.tv/buzz. Congratulations, Todd. The Wayland Rod and Gun Club is back in the news this week in a face-off with several of its neighbors who are submitting a petitioner's article to special town meeting, seeking to prohibit the discharge of any firearm in town within 1,000 feet of the nearest dwelling. According to state law, gun ranges are not liable in any civil or criminal action if they comply with the local noise regulations that pertained at the time the range was built. The Wayland Rod and Gun Club has been at its current location since 1928. If you haven't yet heard, town residents on Tuesday voted 1,226 to 465 to ban commercial marijuana enterprises in town. The ban now goes to town meeting, where it will need approval of a 2/3 majority for it to be put in place. If the ban is defeated, the planning board will present an article to create a marijuana establishment district at the Sudbury end of town off Boston Post Road. An unusual event on Saturday, October 13th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mass Energize will have e-cars and e-bikes to see and drive at the town center. Finally, last week we spoke of an intermunicipal agreement with Framingham for repairs at Stones Bridge, and we used a photo of the wrong Stone Bridge. The photo showed the old Stone Bridge, which is not used for traffic and is being restored with CPA funds. The agreement with Framingham is for the Stonebridge Potter Road Bridge that crosses the Sudbury River. This bridge is partly in Wayland and partly in Framingham and is used for traffic. Thanks to Selectman Chair Lee Anderson for pointing out our error. That's it for this week's committee reports and other news. Now on to our interviews.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Ken Isaacson, and today our spotlight is on the changes to Wayland's town government structure and its budget process. Last week we got the selectmen's perspective on it, and today we look at the changes through the eyes of the Finance Committee, and I'm joined by Carol Martin, Chair of the committee, and Steve Correa, Vice Chair. 2 years ago, the town hired the Collins Center for Public Management to evaluate our financial and administrative operations and recommend improvements to the efficiency and the effectiveness of those operations. Today we're talking about two of the proposals that they made. Some of them have been already implemented. The first involves changes to the structure of Wayland's town government, and the second proposal is streamlining the budget process. Carol, Steve, thank you for being with us again, and good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we talked to Lee Anderson, and the chair, and we talked to Brian Keaveney, the finance director, last week. So let's start this week by talking about the first proposal, the restructuring of town government. In the last week's program, they told us that the restructuring will bring the town of Wayland in closer alignment with many or most of the towns, the way other towns manage their business. So the first question I have for you is, in what ways will restructuring change the responsibilities and authority of the Finance Committee regarding vis-a-vis the selectmen, the town administrator, and other department heads?
Okay. Well, the Finance Committee will continue to recommend an operating and capital budget to annual town meeting. The proposed Town Administrators Act will funnel all operating budgets and capital requests through the town administrator for review and vetting before being submitted for review by the Finance Committee. That means that the town department heads will now submit their budgets to the town administrator, and any questions the Finance Committee has concerning those budgets will funnel back through the TA's office.
So we'll go through them as opposed to you going directly to the department heads as you used to do.
Actually, I would like to say we never went to the department heads in terms of developing their budgets, but they did present the budgets to us as a committee.
Directly to you.
And in the past couple of years, we moved away from the practice of having every department present to us, and just generally speaking, the larger budgets, usually the $1 million threshold, so was Public Works, Library, Police, Fire, and that's it. But no, they will go through the Town Administrator's office first. And what will happen is we will end up hopefully with less questions, because some of those questions will get answered en route to us.
Okay.
Right. I mean, it's really streamlining the communication and streamlining the information so that by the time we get it, a lot of those questions will already be answered. Right. You know, versus us asking them for the first time. So.
Okay. So you've already started that process, and it's at least into the first year of it. And it's probably early, actually. It just started it this fall, right?
Yeah.
So how is it going in the first couple of months?
Well, this reorganization is, as you said, in its early stages. This is a Board of Selectmen project, and they would obviously have better information on the progress because we only handle our portion of it. I do know what has been adopted by the Board of Selectmen and affects the Finance Committee is the FY20 budget process. And that goal is of which is for the town administrator to give every town budget a thorough review before it's submitted to the Finance Committee. And then part of that review, as Steve was speaking, will be to compare the budget request increase to the guideline. And the school department will continue to submit its recommended budget directly to the Finance Committee.
All right.
And just also mention too, I mean, we're already seeing the communication working really well. I mean, so we've always kind of been doing our own thing, and already we have the town administrator and the schools and the Finance Committee already talking, and that started with the guidelines already. So we're hoping that that process continues throughout the whole thing. So far, it seems to be working. So.
Right. Okay. So one goal for us is to engage in, like Steve said, ongoing budget discussions during this budget process, rather than trying to make sometimes somewhat significant changes in January. And that
so
has
later-
proved very
way later
frustrating.
on.
Exactly, so that there's no surprises.
Right, so that has proved very frustrating both for the administration and the Finance Committee. Time is short, we're on deadline. This way, if we have an ongoing dialogue through the budget process, we're hoping that things will go a little more smoothly.
Okay. Everything's more out in the open, and everybody knows what they're thinking and can talk about it.
Exactly.
Right,
Great. Okay.
and
So
we
up-
already are, actually.
So up until now, the Finance Committee has been charged with the responsibility, we kind of talked about this now, I think, already, of working with the town administrator, the finance director, and the town departments and the school department in establishing and spending the spending policy and guidelines, and in creating the annual budget.
Right.
So the new process is going to change. Well, I think we've gotten through this already. You've gotten ahead of my questions, because it's, unless you have something to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a policy to make, like Steve said, greater communication, to have the workflow more smoothly. But we still, much of it is the same process. The Finance Committee is still going to be working with the town administrator and the finance director, look at budget guidelines. We're going to be reviewing draft budgets. We're going to be submitting an operating budget and a capital budget recommendation to town meeting in the spring. What is different, as I pointed out, is that particularly those boards that have the larger, or departments that have larger budgets, have in the past presented their budget directly to the Finance Committee. Now they will be working through the town administrator's office. So I think one other thing is if we achieve this goal to get the budget honed throughout the process, it will be easier for everyone, and and the workflow, but it will also be easier for residents to understand what is being contemplated and then ultimately recommended.
Okay. Do you see any downsides to this new idea, this new process?
I don't. One downside I see is that it may take time for the various departments to adjust. Those who have been used to coming before the Finance Committee, it may take an adjustment period, I think, for them to work, to feel comfortable or more comfortable with the process.
Yeah, I mean, it is a learning. I mean, this has gone back and forth for a couple of years. Like, you know, the Board of Selectmen, the Town Administrator and the Finance Committee by code is responsible for the operating budget, right? And both people have taken the lead over the years. So we're just trying to get back to both of us taking that lead. And so I think a lot of boards and committees have gotten used to one of those other ways, right? So getting everybody on the same path and understanding what our goals are, it's going to take some time. Exactly. Right. So getting everybody on board to what we're trying to accomplish, I think it could be some challenges with that. You know, different boards are used to working with one or the other groups.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
I do think there's one other positive to this, and that is that when you have all these town budgets and hopefully eventually all the budgets funneling through one point person, and in this case it appears it will be the town administrator, it's easier to achieve the budget guideline.
Oh, absolutely.
Is when you have, it's a bit challenging when you have several departments developing budgets independently and submitting independent budgets, you know, to mesh them. So I think that this will help us also.
Okay.
So if it all goes well, there
Well,
should be
talking
little or no
speaking
gap
about
on these budgets.
The current fiscal year budget, 2019, the tax rate is $18.72, $18.72 per thousand of house valuation, property valuation, and that's up from $18.03 in 2018, and that's a 3.8% increase. There are 4 capital project warrant articles coming to town meeting next month in November. River's Edge, the high school fields, the local fields, those are 3, and there's also the water meter infrastructure, which is not directly part of it's being pulled out of water resources, so it's not exactly coming out of the same pocket. But if they all pass, those items are going to affect and increase the current fiscal 2019 budget, kind of going backwards, right? What's your estimate about how much that's going to impact us?
Yeah, first I want to say that, of course, the FY19 tax rate won't be established until the tax recap is completed and presented in December. So this is the finance director's best case guesstimate. It'll be 1872. It could be, it's in that neighborhood.
More or less.
More or less.
Yeah.
I just want to be
We're
careful
talking
on
about
that.
within pennies, though, right?
Yes, yes, because there's always something that happens that can adjust it up or down, depending on whatever. 4 money articles are being, you are right, are being considered at special town meeting. And there are 3 different funding sources. River's Edge, which is the asbestos abatement article.
Now, this is something many people may not be aware of at this point, because it kind of came out in the process of the mitigation of,
Exactly.
of the land over there. So can you just mention what that is,
Okay.
just to explain where it came from?
Well,
That-
yes.
that- go
Well,
ahead.
as you know, we're moving forward. We're trying to move forward. We're signing an agreement to build affordable housing over at it's called the River's Edge project
Right.
over there. And part of that is testing the property to make sure there is no contamination over there. And in part of that testing, we did some drilling, and we did find that there was some asbestos that was on the site. So what that does is it triggers that the town's responsibility, and that's what this article is all about. Once you do find any type of contamination, it's the town's responsibility, even before we move forward with this project, to clean it up. So we are moving forward. That's what this article is, and that's why it's at the special town meeting and not at the spring town meeting, so that we can start to work to mitigate what those issues are. So we need to work with the Department, DEP to
Environmental protection.
yeah, exactly, who sets the rules about how this cleanup should happen.
Right.
So whether River's Edge happens or not, now that we've found this asbestos, we need to clean it up. So that's why this article is on in the fall town meeting.
And the projected cost of the cleanup is approximately 750 to 800,000. I think that number's being honed as we go, and hopefully we will have a better number on it
All right,
when we get
thanks
to
for-
special town
thanks for
meeting.
explaining that.
So that article, which deals with the asbestos abatement, will be funded by what we call non-exempt debt, and it's included in the Financial Summit operating budget recommendations. So there's not going to make any changes in the number. Okay.
All right. Now, we have a slide that explains the various debt options, which are going to be going up as we speak, but go ahead.
Okay. Okay. And then the advanced water meter reading system will be funded by the Water Department. That's an enterprise fund, and they are self-funding and self-sufficient, or they're designed to be so. While passage of this article could impact future water rates, it is not going to be funded through the general fund taxation. The two field projects, the high school athletic field renovation project and the turf field at the local recreation area, would be funded by exempt debt. And basically that is a separate charge added to the tax bill. So these two combined would add close to $800,000 of debt service starting at FY19. So of course, as the debt's on the books for many years, it starts to decline, but initially it would be about $800,000.
That's debt service
Debt service. That's our cost for year
for
FY19.
borrowing.
For borrowing, and in the next year it might be, I mean, and again, this is not our, as we like to say, it's not our pay grade to know these exact, but it would, to answer your question, yes, that would increase the tax rate for FY19.
Right.
FY20, sorry.
But the taxes that we're paying on those items, on the fields, on the local field, high school field and the local field, would be paying that only over a specific amount of time, and then they would dissolve, like with the high school.
Exactly.
They reduce
So, yeah,
over
so
time.
it's exactly right.
Like a
So
mortgage.
debt service with
Right.
the high school is every year comes down a little bit more as we pay it off, right? So this
Pay
is the
it
same
off,
thing.
right.
You add it on and it comes down.
Right, so
Okay.
I think you wanted to know if both fields pass, what would it cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, want me to answer that? So, again, we're not the ones that calculate the numbers, so I'm going to give you my best case scenarios here. So I believe at the Financial Summit, the projected recommended increase for the operating budget would increase the tax rate from the approximate 1872 to 1902. That was in one of the slides on the summit. And you are correct in your assumption that the debt service costs for these two debt exclusion projects would increase the tax rate. So, and again, although the finance director will have the official figures, a conservative guesstimate for those two field projects, if both passed in November at the special town meeting, would add approximately 10 to 12 cents to the tax rate. So for your full FY20 projected tax rate, you would need to add in the operating amount at the 1902, plus the 10 to 12, plus any cash capital expended at next spring's town meeting for OPEB and capital projects. And that would give you a number. And there's so many variables, I must say, that
Right.
will factor into that. You know, if they both pass, if they don't pass, if the operating budget amounts come in less, if we spend less on cash capital. But that's how you would determine where we're heading.
Okay, so the number we're looking at that we know about is around 1902.
1902. And then I would think we could get a number from the finance director how much the tax would increase for these two projects.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then
the
we would know
finance
where we're
committee,
starting.
yeah,
Yes.
and the finance committee will will mention this obviously at the special town meeting when these articles, are brought forward as well, and it's part of what our job is all about. So,
Yeah, I think we might put something in the recommendation. We're
Exactly.
talking about that. We
But it's important
we
that
haven't
people
finalized
understand that.
our
Yeah.
votes on those items yet, so our recommendations, I should say. And we're undertaking that. We're having a second meeting this week, which is tomorrow night, to focus on the articles and our recommendations, and then our article comments next Wednesday will be finalized.
Okay,
And then-
and just to make it clear to the folks who are viewing, we start broadcasting on Sunday, but this tape is happening the
Oh, sorry.
Wednesday prior. So when
Sorry.
Carol is saying tomorrow night, she actually means on Thursday the 4th.
Yes,
Okay,
and we finish up on Wednesday, October 10th.
okay.
Okay.
Um,
Are you answering that question? Yeah.
yep, yeah.
At the budget, we did that pretty well, didn't we?
Yeah.
At the
Sorry.
budget summit, the town administrator and the finance director recommended a townwide budget increase for 2020 of 3.68%. But as of now, the Finance Committee, Town Administrator, and the Finance Director are all recommending a combined school town operating budget of $2.6 million. Dollars and percentages aren't the same thing, so could you explain the difference? Or
Where we're going.
where the 2.6
Where we're going.
comes from?
I think where we've been is probably, let's get to where we are. So since the summit, which by the way was the first one we've had, and it was extremely well done, and the Finance Committee was, I thought there was some really good information disseminated, and we were particularly impressed that the staff put that together, and it was great. And also gave us a shout out because the Finance Committee created the basic model last year that was used as a basis. So it's a real collaborative effort, which is great.
And which is important to note too. Other towns do that. We have never done it, so
Right.
which is really great. It kind of kicks off the whole budgeting process of where we are and what's the what can we what's our starting point in this whole thing.
So that's going to be an annual thing then, right?
Yeah, we
yeah,
think so.
yeah.
And it also provides some long range information, which is good
Yeah, we look
because
out
you don't
5 years.
you don't want to just budget in the short term. You've got to budget keeping your eye on the long term. But so since the summit, the Finance Committee has reviewed that information and the assumptions, and we have worked with the town administrator and the finance director to hone the FY20 budget guideline. And I will say this, in the past, we have found there's been some confusion over the percent guideline, and actually, as we talked earlier, the three components to develop your tax rate is the increase in the operating budget, any debt exclusions that we do, any additional cash capital we spend. That number has confused folks because they hear that number of increase on the budget, operating budget, they think that's the increase.
Right.
And then
They
we have
just
a
think
different
that-
number.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
this
they
year,
can just add that to their numbers, right? They just take that as a standard.
right, so we said, and actually, to be honest with you, I think it has been a little confusing even to those who are in the process of administering this. So this year we're taking it a little different tact, and we're using a year-over-dollar increase. You can clearly get a percentage from the dollar increase and say, well, if we increase the budget by X dollars, what is that percent? But rather than focus on a percent and then have budgets focused on remaining within the percent, we have allocated this pot of money, if you
dollars
will,
where we think we can afford.
$2.6 million. It's what the summit has said to the Finance Committee. We feel this is what we could continue to provide services that the town would like for this amount of money. So we said, okay, let's try that. So the Finance Committee did vote Monday night to support the $2.6 million year-over increase. Those funds will be allocated by the town administrator and the superintendent, whichever way they come to agree on, and then present that to the Finance Committee. We have no guidelines issued on what the percents they should divide that money up. That's up to them.
And what's important to note too is that it's level services, right? It's the same services year to year. It's not, if you want new services, well, that's an increase of your budget that you need to come forward and present and why you want to do that.
Right, sure.
So they're going to work together, even if they want to provide something new, to get it within the $2.6 million. So that's the idea. So I do want to add one thing though before we go off. In addition to the $2.6 million, the town has a commitment, a health initiative commitment that we have with the collective bargaining units in town that we made during the process when we made some adjustments to the health insurance. And as part of that, we still have a one-time cost that we need to fund, and that will not exceed $300,000. So the money that can be allocated amongst the various departments is 2.6, and then there is another number that we'll know will not exceed 300,000 will be added to the 2.6 for a total operating budget increase. That 300,000 will not be in the budget for FY21.
Okay.
So it's a
clear?
one-time
So that means
cost.
that $2.9 million is the number, but 2.6 of it is what's available for departments to use.
That's a good way to
Yeah,
put
that's
it.
a good way of putting it. Yeah.
That's okay. And then because the health initiative we're guesstimating now, but and that money's in the current budget, and if some of that money gets spent, that health initiative cost may be 280 or
Right.
270 or whatever. So that's the number that will go into the budget.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question here now. So does that 2.6 million in budget increases equate to the 3.68%?
No, we're not
Or
using
not?
percent, but no,
It does not?
no.
Okay.
No, and again, we were talking about this before the tape rolled. We really want to get away from percent because it creates some confusion. It's a
You're going to back into a percentage.
we're going to back into a dollar
You're not
amount.
going to ask, you're not going to state a percentage up front
Right.
and say this is our goal, but you're going to wind up backing, it's going to turn into a percent when you look at the numbers.
You are correct that it's going to turn into a percent that when we create our report to the town that we have in the warrant, we will have a total percent then.
Yeah.
But that will also include whatever the health initiative funding is as well.
Okay, I
So
got it.
we will say
All right.
it's this plus this equals blah for a percent. And we think that creates one process versus several processes.
Okay. All right. So for 2019, the town's financial advisor, Unibank, suggested the town-wide budget increase guideline for the next 5 years. Now, I don't know where that stands today because of this new initiative with the after the summit, but they created a guideline of 3.5% or less to avoid future overrides and help maintain the bond rating. The 3 point, well, I don't know if I want to ask this question now because we're not talking about percentages.
Right, that's okay, we
But,
get the answer.
The 3.68.
Carol has the answer in real dollars versus percentages.
All right. So how does this affect us here? Are we headed for more overrides if we purchase these fields?
Just let me add to it before Kara jumps in. So yeah, that was a recommendation, but also part of that recommendation was that debt would be would be exempt as well. Remember too, that was the other piece of their recommendation.
Except that which continues to carry.
Exactly right.
Yeah, but, okay.
But
It still adds to the amount people pay.
exactly
So.
exactly right.
So
Well, so does
Unibank,
non-exempt.
exactly. So Unibank is our financial advisor, and to Steve's point, he had several recommendations for the town, and one of them is to avoid overrides, and also we need to protect what is called our fund balance, which helps us, as you've pointed out, to maintain our Moody's AAA bond rating with Moody's, and as interest rates start to climb, it becomes more important for us to maintain that rate because it gives us a lower cost of borrowing. Also because as we continue to fund and agree as a town that we would like some of these large capital projects, it's good to have the least possible borrowing rate possible. So, but to answer your question about the, and so that is one of his roadmaps. And essentially what he's saying, and if you watch some of the tapes, the Finance Committee has expressed that in the last couple of weeks, is that we really do not think long-term, or maybe even in the short term, we should be continuing to have operating budget increasing. We need that. We need to try to work our way down, and we're talking about a number of initiatives or kinds of activities we can engage to get our operating budget increase moving away from
And we've done that in the
down to
past.
3.5 in the past. Yeah, to 3.5.
We've
or
had it like
we-
3.3 in the past, and it goes up to 3.5. So there's ways of
Achieving
of
that.
achieving that. So that's
Yeah.
what we want to do down the road.
But as far as the override, by law, I think it's state law, the towns and cities are allowed under the Proposition 2.5 to increase the revenue they generate by 2.5 plus new growth every year. So if you do that, then your tax levy remains the same. If you increase your budget by the 3, 3.5, or even the 5, that's possible if we add in these two exempt items, then yes, you are decreasing your levy at a faster rate, and then you would increase the option to have the possibility that you would end up with an operating override. It is currently estimated, both I think at the summit and also the Finance Committee has looked at a little more conservative calculations, and it's estimated that we could face an override within 10 years, an operating override. That does not mean we're going to have one next year or 10 years or 5 years. It means that we are looking, again, as we said earlier, we want to look at the short term, we want to look at the long term of all these budget requests, because decisions we make now will affect our long-term financial health. And of course, we certainly would all like to provide the services folks want, purchase capital items that we need, but still avoid overrides.
Right, and I think we've talked about that at both of our last FinCom meetings about working with our new town administrator and putting together a strategy. You know, we didn't want to get too hard on her since she's only been in the job, what, 15 days or something. But you know, we're hoping in the next budgeting process that we will start to hear strategies of how we can work those numbers so that they are lower, that we don't push that levy you know, too close and use up that whole levy. So we want to start talking about strategic planning of, you know, ways we can be more efficient in our government.
I'll be interested in hearing more about that.
I mean, I think Steve is exactly right. I think the Finance Committee has taken or adopted not a policy, but we're adopting, we have a little bit of a consensus that we have to give the new town administrator some leeway. She does have some financial background. I will say personally that I've had some interactions with her over this budget guideline process and a few other discussions, and her knowledge of finances and concepts is great and is very encouraging. And so I think the Finance Committee has agreed to, as Steve said, not be, to just sort of let this go and see how it goes. Certainly we are going to be very concerned if the budget comes in over the 2.6 million. But I don't want people to think I'm saying everybody gets a blank check here.
It's not like we're going to have like carte blanche on this
we
budget.
Right.
But no, we're still going to push.
We want to give her an opportunity. Like, it hasn't even had 5 minutes to review the budget. Doesn't even know what's in our budget. So you kind of have to give it a little bit of a buy, if you will.
Can I ask you a question? Let's come out of this conversation. How did you arrive at the 2.6 million?
Okay, the 2.6.
Good question.
Yeah, we didn't.
Just pull it out of the air.
No, we didn't. But speaking of pulling it out of the air, as you know, this is my 7th year on the Finance Committee, and in my first few years, we would sit together and discuss what we thought the budget guideline should be. About 2 or 3 years ago, we said, you know what, we really need some analytics to support our decision. Because if someone challenged us and said, where did you get that number, we wouldn't have a very strong answer. And here, no, well, you see. And so we started to develop analytics, and we used a model last year, and that basis of that model was used for the Financial Summit. And it was from plugging those numbers in with a 3.5% increase in the operating budget, plus the new growth, that the Finance Director and the Town Administrator, working with the school department as well, came up with the 2.6 million, plus, I do have to say once again, the 3 million that we have to pay.
Right.
I mean, it's a great forecasting tool that we've
created.
That the Finance Committee committed. And I got to say, Dave Watkins, our prior chair, worked really hard with Brian and
Klaus and George
as well.
So Klaus, Shigley, and George, they really worked a ton of, not this past summer, but the year prior to that.
Building a forecasting system, which really, you know, puts in all your committed costs in there, our debt service, what it is, and because we know what our debt service is going out, right? And so you can kind of project out and kind of look at it. And so, and then you take that, you tweak it based on what your budgeting process is. That's what most kind of companies do, and that's what a lot of towns do as well. So this is a great tool that, you know, we were long overdue to get, and that's kind of, this is, I think it was the first year that we've really used it.
We used it last year,
yeah,
but this was the first year we had a summit, and
Exactly.
we used a preliminary version or a less involved version 2 years ago. So the last couple of years, our decisions have been analytically based. Every year we have more analytics available, so we feel a more informed decision, and actually it makes it easy for the Finance Committee as a whole to understand what the guidelines options are. And I think this is going to work out pretty well with the dollar amount. It's something different, and hey, we're having a new policy procedure this year. Might as well have a new budget guideline plan.
Well, if it works, that's great.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, last question I want to ask you is, so what does happen between now and town meeting?
Okay, here we go.
In April.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Are you?
Yep. So the FY20 budget process will continue now that we have set the budget guideline, with capital requests being submitted to the committee within a couple weeks. The town's draft operating budgets will follow around mid-November. The school budget will follow by December 15th. And the Finance Committee will review the capital requests and issue a draft budget in December, we hope. In January, we will vote a draft operating budget. We will present our recommendation for an FY20 budget in early February when we do that budget presentation, and we will submit our recommended budget both in the warrant and at annual town meeting in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's another year.
And that's it. We're done.
Let's get started on 21. Is there anything else you want to add before we finish this conversation?
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank
You're
you very
welcome.
much. It's always a pleasure seeing you, Ken.
Pleasure to be here.
Are
Happy
you all
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the buzz for this week. Next week, we tackle the fields, specifically the 2 high school field projects coming before a special town meeting on November 13th. The 2 articles were brought to annual town meeting last April, but were not ready for prime time. They are now, and will bring you up to date on the details, concerns, and the latest cost estimates. Joining me will be the chair of the school committee, Jean Downs. Please join us for that. And remember, the buzz airs on Sundays and Tuesdays at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on your public cable channel, Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 37, and we're online on demand anytime at our website, wacam.tv/buzz. There you'll find an archive of past programs and a schedule of upcoming shows, along with links to documents from subjects presented on the shows. And now you'll find a transcript of this week's interview, along with our committee reports, every week in the Town Crier, both in print and online. If you have a town issue you'd like discussed on the Buzz, call us, email us, or use the contact form on our website. Tell us what's on your mind and tell us what you think about the show. I'm your host, Ken Isaacson. On behalf of the entire volunteer crew and guests here at Wayland Weekly Buzz, thank you for watching, and please tell your friends to tune in too.
What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. 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 What should you want to know?